some smoke. Doesn't get prettier than that.
I don't remember it.
And a one-hand effort by Harris. And Harris stabs it.
Yo. Another week of college football. Back with the boys, Bruce, Bryce, like always. Fun week last week. I don't know if we didn't do as good as the week before. I don't think, but another fun week. Bunch of good games this week coming. Bruce, you were giving a little breakdown before. I had to cut you off just so that you could save the take for the show. But what's going on? What's going on this week?
Man, I'm just too fired up. Yeah, there's I mean, we started last night. It was a solid night. And then we have a couple games this evening, and yeah, this slate's crazy. I mean, you have like really overpriced receivers, I think, maybe where they should be actually, and then that nobody are going to play, and then you know, just some solid games we can get into. You know, I kind of let y'all know that I like Oklahoma State Tulsa a little bit more than probably the field does. I mean, the receivers are probably going to be chalky, but and Ollie, of course, but you know, you can play that Tulsa side too as well. So yeah, excited to get into talking it out with you guys.
It was funny too. You bring up last night. That was one of the worst beats. I think JBC had it too. But for those of you that didn't see, the team had freaking 87 points and way over, way covering. And then they were beating them so bad they took 10 minutes off the fourth quarter and they canceled all the bets because of it. It was literally tilting. But Bryce, what's going on this week? Wedding season for you again, but we get some winners before that.
Yeah, at least it's a Friday wedding. So basically I get this show, cash show, and then hopping over to this wedding real quick. So got all dressed up just because it's kind of a tight time frame here. But yeah, I hate being on the road during football season, but you know, I think this is pretty much the last year of doing it. I didn't get to play the slate last night. Didn't register it because I totally forgot that college football is illegal in Tennessee. So like I registered the main slate when we were going down through Kentucky. But yeah, I had that bet last night just to have a sweat on the games, like because we had the rehearsal dinner and shit. I was like, you always need like a wedding sweat, you need like a rehearsal dinner sweat, you need all of it. So I mean, I don't know how that's legal personally. I mean, I get the 55-minute stipulation is like, it's like your guy withdraws in tennis with the lead, or like, his opponent withdraws. It still pays the bet. Like I don't see how that's a thing. But I've
they
never
gotta fix it because it keeps happening now. Like they just
like,
have
can
to.
you even bet? Can you even bet big totals anymore? Because like if a team, like say you're laying,
I had the over yesterday, not for a lot, for just a little bit, but I had it.
Yeah,
oh,
I
you
mean,
mean it's like you not literally
say it's like a 50. Like you're a 50-point favorite. Like, can you ever feel comfortable betting a 50-point favorite? Like, because if they're covering,
totally right.
There's a decent chance they mercy rule them. You know, there's no like stringent mercy rules. Just kind of like, oh, these teams kind of agree to it.
It's just crazy because, and I get it too. Like, I wasn't even mad. I forget the Kentucky game a few weeks ago. They were only up like one score over the spread, and I didn't mind that getting. But when it's already over. Like the thing's over, just pay, and the people get rewarded. That I doubt anyone had the other side, honestly, because how could you take the other side in that spot? But just crazy. But we got another good week coming this week. Lot of good games. We start out actually with our boy Wakey's Florida State team that has looked. I don't know if this is the DK order, but it's the order on my Saver Sim, so hopefully it is. Florida State, they've been awful through 2 games. I mean, horrendous. And now they're only favored by 6.5 over Memphis, 53.5 total. Bruce, start us out. Can Florida State save it, or is this just a down year for them?
Yeah, I think this is probably a get right spot if there ever was one, just because Memphis is terrible against the pass. And you know, they're going to need DJU to throw the ball down the field accurately to do so. But Memphis, a lot of preseason hype with them. They still have Seth Hennigan, who feels like he's been there forever. And he's a solid quarterback, and run just a little bit too. So, this Florida State defense has looked really bad the first couple weeks. So you have to have some interest in this Memphis side. I think Mario Anderson Jr. I'm trying to remember where he was before, but I think it was South Carolina, maybe. He's a solid running back. He got 69% of the snaps last week, and scored 4 touchdowns on the year. So you have to have some interest there, I think, especially with how Florida State's rush defense has looked. Their D line and linebackers have just been terrible. So have some interest there in him, just because he's a workhorse guy. And then receiver Rock Taylor, he's going to be solid too. 20% target share, first couple weeks on the field a ton. All these receivers for Memphis feel like they've been there a long time. Blankumsey as well. And all the Florida State receivers are probably going to be tournament plays. Game's going to be slow, but Douglas and Benson, Portier, those guys play in tournaments for sure.
Yeah. Another thing I just don't understand on Sabre. I know I talked about this last week too, but it somehow got this game 32-29, basically. So you're talking 61 points, 53 is the total. I want to ask, like, the Sabre, just because I am legitimately curious. Do you know, Bruce? Like, is it just the Sims that shoot these totals or something? Like, does it mean anything that this is 10 points higher than the total almost?
I've never looked at the totals in Sabre, but now that you mention it, I would probably start looking at it more.
Every other sport, though, it's like close. Like in baseball, like the higher total, they're like within range at least. But college football, for whatever reason, are like way off. So I'm like curious, legitimately, if it means anything. Like, because it could be a decent edge if it's like that. If we find
it's probably wherever they're scraping the data from for the totals isn't like updating correctly.
Do you think it's scraping wrong? That's what I was wondering.
I would guess, just because like the baseball totals will update like an hour before the slate and get correct to where they should be. So
that's what I want.
I assume it's something like that.
So you think it's just don't bank anything on it. Just wait till it updates.
I wouldn't. I mean, shit, I don't even like the over. What is it on Penny?
53
and a half. Yeah, I mean,
and you still like under like me. That's why I was curious. I'm like, am I just missing something? Why is this so high? But what do you think about this game?
I can't find any cash plays here. There's just way better spots on this slate. If Bruce likes Memphis, then I like Memphis a bit. Florida State 6.5. I mean, they've been god awful, and they're a really hard team to click in DFS just because they rotate running backs. You're not playing DJ at quarterback because he sucks, can't run. And, their receivers are kind of like one-off tournament plays. I think Bruce listed the 3. I'd say my favorite would be probably Portier. At 3,400, I think is like playable as a tournament flyer. I think he'd probably be like my one play on the Florida State side. Memphis don't have tons of interest. They don't rotate quite as much, but I think Anderson and we've been playing Taylor and Blankmasy have been there for, it seems like 5 years. It's like Cam Rising at Utah. It's like you're just playing the same guys over again. You know exactly what you're going to get out of them. And I'm not sure that it's enough on this slate. As bad as Florida State's been, I don't think their defense is like completely, or like their pass defense is completely horrible. So I'd probably rather take a shot on Anderson than these receivers personally.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you guys I couldn't believe the line last week. I know it's easy to say, but man, I could not figure out how they were giving 17 to Boston College after that first game. It was outrageous, and it proved to be wrong. But I have to be on Memphis here. Florida State looks terrible. DJU's been terrible all 3 places he's been now. They just look done to me. They look like they're going to quit, and I just don't see how you could lay points with this team. But it is a spot where maybe they get right against Memphis. Mario Anderson looks like the only play to me, though. I mean, 6,200. He's got to be pretty low owned, too, I would assume, right? Like, there's good running back plays on the slate. I can't imagine.
At that price, too. Like, everyone's going to play like Darius Taylor. Like, no one's going to play Anderson.
I mean, what do we think he comes in literally like
Probably single
No,
digits.
no ownership.
No,
I would
probably,
say like
probably
5%.
yeah, somewhere around there. It's going to be single digits for sure.
I mean, I think that's a very good play just because they haven't stopped the run. And what if they do quit? Like, what if they do just quit on this game? He could have a monster game at no ownership, but I don't see anything else. I'm not playing a quarterback in this game. I'm not going there. Next game, Bruce's game, OK State minus 17.5, 62.5 total versus Tulsa. OK State, like, didn't look great to me last week. I don't know what to make of it, but I know Bruce has got a bunch to say about this game. So what do you got, Bruce?
Yeah, this game's probably one of my favorites. There's not a lot of great like up tempo games this week, and this one has that potential if it stays close. You look at the offenses on both sides. They're pretty explosive, and the defenses have been very bad. The Oklahoma State defense just is getting gashed. And both teams are fast, over 2.5 offensive plays per minute, which is pretty close to tops in the country. Definitely top 5 on the slate, both teams. And both teams love to throw. So definitely going to have some interest. There's not a lot of cheap quarterbacks on the slate. So I have a little bit of interest in Kirk Francis in tournaments. Been a good passer the first couple of weeks, gets the ball out fast, and like a 13-yard ADOT. So you love to see that for a tournament play. Their team total is 22 and a half. So that's not terrible for a 6K quarterback, and they'll probably be down. So they'll have to throw. Ollie Gordon, he's going to be owned, but probably not as much. They do have Tennessee next week. So it's classic look ahead spot for them, and you just wonder how much he's going to play with that big one looming. So yeah, he's going to be less owned than usual. I would think probably in 25-30% range, somewhere around there. And then receivers, you have both Presley brothers, one on each side, Braylon Presley and Brennan Presley. So could have both of them scoring touchdowns in this game. The Oklahoma State Presley's not as good for sure. I think he scored a touchdown last week, if I'm not mistaken. Camden Benjamin is probably my favorite Tulsa receiver. 100% snaps last week. He has a 31% target share, a couple touchdowns. And then you have the big 3 Oklahoma State receivers, Presley, Owens, and Stribling. Those 3 guys are always in play. And make big plays every week. Is just tough getting them correct. But you definitely want to take shots there in tournaments, as this could be a high scoring game.
Bryce, what do you think?
I mean, this profiles is one of the best games of the slate for Oklahoma State. I think they have the best team total here. I think you do want exposure to this game for sure. I don't love getting it through Bowman. I know we've shit talked Bowman a decent amount on this show. He just always seems too expensive for his upside. He's going to get you like 20 to 25, which is fine. If he was like 6, 7K, but 8.3K. I wouldn't take that. I think you want 30 out of your QB at that price. So I'm likely passing on Bowman, even though I do like Oak State here. I'd rather get exposure through Ollie. I mean, he's the most expensive player on the slate for a reason. He's an absolute stud. The thing is, running back's kind of loaded this week as it is most weeks. So it's are you going to make the decision to force him in, or play some of this cheaper value or mid-tier guys at running back? So, that's a decision you're going to have to make. But I would prefer to be over on Ollie on this slate. Receivers, I would rank Presley, Stribling, and then Owens. I like Stribling a little bit more than Owens here. I think he's just a little more involved in the offense, and he comes in at a lower price. So people will just kind of assume that I think he's more the wide receiver 2 than Owens is personally. Presley's, the undisputed 1 here, and priced up at 7.1K. I think that's a pretty fair price on him. Would prefer to be over him and Stribling in this game as well. So it's kind of how I'm approaching Oklahoma State. Tulsa, I think you can get into the quarterbacks here. I mean, 6K for Francis. I mean, I think there are other spots that I would prefer to go, but he is playable. I would prefer him to Bowman as like a tournament play. Running backs, probably pass on. My guy here is Benjamin. Bruce said he has 100% snap count. Guy's seen a ton of targets. They're going to be playing from behind. Receivers have had good games against Oklahoma State this year. So, I think Benjamin is a guy that you can play in pretty much any format and another guy I want to be over on.
Yeah, I mean this game looks good to me too. So I'm with you guys. The interesting part for me because we always think about pairing guys, and these receivers from OK State are awesome. Ollie's awesome, and Bowman just sucks. So it's like in college where you need upside from the quarterback position, it's really hard to pay $8,300 for a guy like Bowman when you can just get more upside in other spots. But it's even weirder when these receivers are like some of the best plays on the board. All three project good. I just can't imagine playing two of these guys without the quarterback. But college is just weird enough where you can do stuff like that. And these receivers are just really good plays. And like you guys said, I think you both said it, Bowman just isn't really in play for me ever, unless it's just a weird slate. So I definitely want a ton of exposure to this spot. If I either want to play Ollie and one receiver or two receivers and no Ollie. If I don't play Ollie, I need two receivers in this spot against Tulsa. Yeah. But I'll probably end up 1-1. And honestly, I like Owens the best, I think, just because he kind of falls in that middle ground where he's 300 more than Stribling. And honestly, it's probably just you need to pick one and hope you get lucky type of thing, because all three of these guys are good. I mean, Presley has the most upside, but he's also more expensive and stuff. So just a really good spot. And I'm with you guys on this Benjamin too. I don't really understand his like projections. He just crushes. He's in a great spot. OK State's gonna give up volume to him. So he seems like a smash to me. So I'm with you guys. And then the game stack, because I like Tulsa. There's no way they should be plus 17.5, 18 points. It just shouldn't be. So I think Tulsa plays them close. I guess I don't like any. I could play Francis, I guess, in a game stack. My issue, though, is quarterback's loaded. I think quarterback's awesome this week. So do I really want to play Francis? This might be the type of game where I just play 2 OK State, 1 Tulsa, little mini stack to go with some other spots on the slate. But I'm with you guys. Great game. You can game stack it, play as much or a little of this spot as you want. It is in Tulsa, right?
Yeah.
An actual home game for Tulsa?
It is, yep.
Okay, perfect. Let's move on to the next one. We got Bama, Wisconsin. Bama is 15.5, 49.5. Interesting little game here. Bruce, what do you got in this one?
Yeah, this also looks like a solid game to me. I think Bama is just too much for Wisconsin here. I like my guy Milroe again. It's just I think this Wisconsin defense is not good at all. Just looking at the numbers coming in, they haven't really played anybody either. So. And I don't like Tyler Van Dyke, especially against this Bama defense. It looks, they've looked solid. They had a little bit of problems with South Florida last week early on, but then they figured it out. But they're putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and they're not allowing a ton of explosive plays either. And man, I just don't like this Wisconsin offense. Any team with Tyler Van Dyke, I just have a problem playing. It was Miami last year, and they struggled. But I have a ton of interest in the Bama pieces like Milroe, Haynes, and Miller. Last week they had issues on the offensive line, and in the fourth quarter they brought in their usual starter just because he'd been banged up, and they looked great. Haynes ran all over him. Miller looked great. So I kind of expect him to do that here. The problem is those guys are priced crazy high. You got 7,300 for Haynes and 7K for Miller. It's just hard to play both of those. Both those guys are going to get crazy split snaps, like 58% for Haynes and then 41% for Miller. I'd rather play Haynes just because he's kind of looked better. But The receivers too, they kind of rotate a little bit, but last week they went Ryan Williams with for 82% of the snaps, and I think he's really good. He's one of those top 3 receiver recruits that I've mentioned in the offseason. Has 3 touchdowns on the year. Just kind of relies on the deep ball, but Wisconsin is allowing a ton of explosives through the air. I think they're bottom 20 in that stat, along with the 2 teams from the last game, Oklahoma State and Tulsa. They're both there too. So I like Ryan Williams a ton. Jeremy Bernard, both those guys are kind of around the same price point. So I will have some of those. And then Pauling on the other side, if you want to run back, I don't think you have to have it with Van Dyke in there, but I love Ryan Williams and Bernard.
Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Milroe is one of the best plays on the slate. I think, I think he projects pretty solidly as the top quarterback here, just because of his running ability. I never loved Milroe as a passer, but it is a good spot for him, as Bruce mentioned. You are going to need him to get it done on the ground as well at 10K. 304 won't quite do it. You need a rushing score too in there, and I think he likely gets against this Wisconsin defense. I wouldn't play him and Haynes together. I do prefer Haynes out of the Bama backfield if you're choosing one of them. Haynes definitely not a cash play, but I think he's definitely playable in tournaments. I think at 7.3K, that's a pretty hard click on this slate, even being Bama's number 1 running back. I don't really think he gets tons of ownership here, so I kind of like him in tournaments. And then I do like your guy, Ryan Williams. I think he's playable in any format here. Only 5.6K, doesn't break the bank. You're playing a little bit of roulette, as always, with some of these Bama receivers, but he does look to be the best option here. And then I don't really play guys against Bama or Georgia. It's, if people want to play them, that's fine with me. I don't think you need a run back personally. Don't love the way Wisconsin's looked, and Van Dyke is ass. So rather just fade them.
Yeah, you guys bring up a lot of good points for sure. Wisconsin's looked a little rough too. Even Pauling, who's been a stud in the past, he's got a ton of targets though, which kind of caught my eye. 5,100, especially if you play Milroe with like another weapon. I'm definitely okay with Pauling, even though I agree with Bryce where I don't think I ever play people against Bama. I just feel like he's too cheap, though, for a possession guy but he probably doesn't have the upside you need to win tournaments these days either, which makes it somewhat interesting. But Pauling's at least on my radar, 5,100 possession guy. Bama, though, so this is the 3rd week in a row we've talked about. I'm glad Bruce brought this up because this is my only note I got on my sheet. But these stud receivers that we've talked about, I just don't understand the price. 5,600 for Ryan Williams. It's just a misprice to me, and I feel like he's misprojected too. Like even in our projections, like Sabres got him at 11. I think Bruce has him at 12. And again, I just think those projections are too low, and I just feel like he's a stone cold lock. Like, I mean, 5,600 for this guy's upside both weeks, and it's not just if it was just the game logs, 2 for 139 and 2, 4 for 68 and 1. It'd be one thing, but then Bruce says he's a top 3 receiver coming in. You factor everything in, and you can play him with Milroe, who's got all the upside in the world. It's just a slam dunk. I mean, absolutely love Ryan Williams. You can even play Jeremy Bernard, too, at 5,900. I don't like him as much just because he kind of feels like Pauling to me in a way where I think he gets you like 14, 15 points. I just don't know if he ever like totally busts things open, especially with how much I like Ryan Williams. But I don't know. I agree with where you guys are in this game, though. Wisconsin's just a tough click against Bama. But, man, Bama, I could even say playing Milroe and Ryan Williams and no run back like Bryce said. Pauling's fine if you need to fit some stuff in, but you don't need to go there. Let's move on to the next one. Man, how's this total this low? LSU 6.5, 48.5, South Carolina. Low total for at least in my eyes, but these defenses, it's another game too where Saber-Sim is like 11 points higher than this total. So I don't know where it's crazy, these numbers. But These defenses have been pretty good, Bruce. What do you think here?
Yeah, the LSU defenses looked a lot better than they did last year. That's for sure. They got destroyed every week. We were stacking teams up against them. And this South Carolina defensive line it looks rough. I don't know how LSU is going to run the football. They had issues last week against, man, I forgot who they played. They played some small school and they just could not run the football at all. So that's why you see Nussmeier's pass rate over expectancy like top on the slate, just because they can't run the football. They had trouble week 1 with whoever USC. They couldn't run on USC, and now they have to play one of the toughest defensive lines on the road. So he's going to be slinging it. That makes me like him and his receivers quite a bit. Kyron Lacey, Mason Taylor. Kyron Lacey's 8,400, which is crazy. So no one will be on him. But he has, his slate breaking potential as one of those new LSU guys. We've got Malik Neighbors and BTJ the last couple of years. So, I think he's in play. He's definitely going to be unowned. So I have some interest there in tournaments for sure. And then Mason Taylor's 4,700. 7 targets per game. He is a tight end, so it's more of a safer play, but I have some interest there. And you have Xavier Thomas and CJ Daniels. They're both cheaper, so those guys have to be in play. 6 and 5 targets last week, so have some interest there. And then on the South Carolina side, Rocket Sanders at 4,900. Whoever LSU played last week, it's slipping my mind.
Nickel State, the chat was
Nickel State. There we go. So they had this white guy, little white running back, and he ran for 125. And this was a guy that started. And he ran for 125 on LSU's defense. So, if he can do it, Rocket Sanders can do it. He got 77% of the snaps last week against Kentucky, and I'm seeing his ownership like low, like 20, 25%. That interests me a good bit. Line yards for their defensive line aren't good at all. So I think I like Rocket Sanders a lot at that price point for sure. LSU should have two running backs, Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson. I think both of those guys are kind of low. All it takes is a touchdown at that price, pretty much, and you can get there. Josh Williams is probably more attractive to me, but it's a tough matchup. So it's probably tournament only, but Sanders is a great play in my opinion.
Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this game screams a little more ugly to me than LSU games normally do. I do like Rocket Sanders at 4.9 here, a good amount. It just seems like he should be up in the 6K range to me. Like, he's not a lock or anything, but I think it's a pretty good spot for him here at home. He's just too cheap for playing that amount of snaps in a decent running offense. South Carolina's running the ball a ton this year, and he should see a lot of volume here. Don't have any interest in the South Carolina passing game. LSU running game, conversely, I also have no interest in. Really good defensive line and really bad running backs that are splitting. Just don't want to attack them here. If I'm playing anyone in LSU, it'd be Kyron Lacey. I don't think anyone makes that click at 8.4K. I think people would rather, spend their money elsewhere. So you're going to get him at like super low ownership, and like he could put up a 40 spot in this spot. I just think he can every week. I think he's really talented, and don't have as much interest in Nussmeier at 9.1K. I'd rather pay for Milrow or pay down for like Garrett Green. I know we'll get to this West Virginia pick game here in a bit, but I just like the options a little too much at quarterback to really include Nussmeier much of my plans. So it's kind of Lacey and Sanders for me here. Sanders could be considered a cash play for sure. Lacey definitely not.
Yeah, so I agree. This total looks low. The weird thing for me, one of my favorite plays coming in before I started like looking at projections and looking at different things is this Sellers dude from South Carolina, just because of price. Like he's 6,200. The first game he got, where's my numbers at? He got 22 carries in that first game, and it was a close game. He only got 68 yards off it, but 22 rushes. He's 6,200. In that first game, we watched this defense get carved by USC pretty good. So the problem I have is I was hoping Bruce. This is where I sit back and hope Bruce like throws some receiver out for me for South Carolina, because I don't know who to pair him with. He is a runner, so I don't necessarily need it. But my leverage, I like Sellers probably too much. So I'm sure it's not a normal play. It's a tournament play for me, but I think he might get loose a little bit on this LSU team. I actually don't like Rocket Sanders. I get it. I get why, because of the price point. 4,900. I just watching him eyeball test. He looks shitty to me. I don't think he looks that good. And I love running back. Like running back, as we get to some of these other games, I just really like some running back plays. So I don't know if I'll get to Rocket Sanders, but this Sellers, he's got freaking goggles too, it looks like. I just pulled his profile up. Horace Grant out there at quarterback. Can I play anyone with him though, Bruce? Is there any receivers that I can bookmark at all?
I think the only one is probably Jared Brown, and then
these projections are awful.
Yeah, because his passing has been terrible. I mean, he had
he
two
looks
touchdown
like he
passes.
Sucks at throwing, I'll admit it.
He
look like much of a thrower.
He's young, so he's a freshman. I think he's 18, so he's one of those.
The player of the year of South Carolina too. It says like 2 years ago, redshirt freshman.
They had big expectations for him and Nick Harbor. Nick Harbor's like the next DK Metcalf. If you look up his YouTube
3,500, is that my guy?
I mean, he doesn't play much, but he's big play potential guy.
He came in though with expectations, like a tournament, and like that big tournament. I could play Sellers and Harbor and run it back with Lacey.
Yeah, so Harbor is 6'5", 235, and I mean,
you sold me. I don't even need to hear anything else.
He's like an Olympic 100-meter guy. So
this is the dude I was waiting for, Bruce. I needed the push. 3,500. Give me a good cheap 3,500. 2 unowned guys here. You sold me. Screw Jared Brown. I don't need his ass. I need Nick Harbor, baby. I like that, but let's keep it scoot. LSU side, I mean, I'm not playing anything except Lacey. I think Lacey's a really good play, though. I mean, 8,400. No way anyone's clicking that. Not at 8,400.
K Fallick is clicking that.
K Fallick is definitely clicking Lacey at 8,400. But besides K Fallick, no one else is clicking that. So, and he's a beast. He's in that same role that's going to crush. So, I actually really, in a tournament where you're trying to get to the top, I actually really like that. Like, 2 that way, 1 back with Lacey. I know it's strictly tournament. Again, I understand what I'm saying, but I like that in tournaments. The last game of the morning session, we got interesting one too. Mizzou -15, BC 54 total. I don't think Mizzou's given up a point yet this year. Have they, Bruce? What do you got here?
Two shutouts. They look good on defense. You know, the big question in this game is health of Luther Burden and Theo Weiss. I know Weiss got banged up last week, and Burden left the field early too, and he's been sick this week too. So, yeah, it could be one of those slow, you know, a lot of runs in this game as well. Boston College is 75% run early on in the year with Bill O'Brien. So. Yeah, it could be a slower game too. The pace is terrible, but you know, I don't know if anybody's going to click Luther Burden either. You know, his ownership's going to be low. He only played 22% of the snaps last week, just because I guess he got banged up. I didn't see him leave the field or what happened to him, but he's 9K, so nobody's going to be on him either. And you know, the guy that everybody's going to play in this game is Nate Noel, 5,600 running back. And you know, Boston College has been good on defense. I thought they were good against Florida State, but it's Florida State, so you don't know what to expect there. But yeah, mostly staying away from this game outside of tournaments. You know, if one of these receivers is out for Missouri, could have some interest in Marquise Johnson or Mookie Cooper, one of those guys. But Yeah, it's rough to play any of these guys other than Noel.
Bryce, what do you think?
I just don't have much interest in this game, period. Say Burden plays, and like if he plays the full game, he's a great play. So for that, I think he's a tournament play. I think he carries too much risk for cash, obviously. Like if he'd be out, I think you'd want Weiss, but he's hurt too. So it's like, if these guys are in and they don't play they're not playing their full snap counts, they're just taking away from everyone else and they're not getting enough for themselves. So it's like, it's just really hard clicks to make. If I had to take a shot on anyone here, it would be Burden, just because like if he does like go 100%, he's always a candidate to put up a 40 spot. We haven't seen like a huge Luther Burden game this year, but I guarantee you it's coming at some point. So Burden would be my guy here. I think Missouri's defense is really good this year. I don't have a lot of interest in Boston College here. I don't think they have success on the ground. They're a running team, so that normally doesn't equate to success. Castellanos is a guy that is a runner, but against this Mizzou defense, I don't really want him. So kind of a full fade on this game for me. I want to like more players here, but it's just kind of hard.
Yeah, it's just Missouri stuck in our head, like at least my head, of just being this juggernaut offense that pushes it up and down the field and stuff. And it just doesn't feel that way this year. Even Burden, I freaking love Burden, but man, 9K is tough in this game. If I did play Burden, though, I would have to play someone from Boston, because you need Boston College to score to pay off that 9K. Like if they don't score, I don't see how Burden. But it does remind me a little bit of Marvin Harrison last year, where he would get in these low totals and no one would play him and he'd be 9K and he would just smash out of nowhere at no ownership. So you guys are both onto something where you can't ever fully roll him out of being a tournament play. If just because he could house 3 or something and just totally dominate. So I'm with you there. I don't totally hate Castellanos in tournaments just because he can run and he's got a cheap receiver. Bond 4,800 is very cheap for him. So I always like when you can get just cheap correlation, even if it's lower owned and it might not have a ton of upside. You just never know in college when all of a sudden they get something going. I mean, who did Missouri? So Missouri's played 2 shitty teams, Buffalo and Murray State. Mm-hmm. Who knows if their defense just isn't as good as we think it is too. I mean, they haven't played anybody. All of a sudden, if they just get moving and Castellanos gets it going with the legs and maybe Bond comes open, I'm just saying early in the year before these teams are tested, we don't know as much as we think. So it could be a sneaky little stack, Castellanos and Bond, just because they're rushing in Missouri. So I don't understand, though. I usually love all the chalk plays, and I get why Noel because of the price. I just don't like they still got the other guy there. What's the other dude's name? Carroll?
Carroll, yep.
And I know Noel's got more work, but Carroll's still there, and it was 2 blowouts. So, like, how do we know it's not just going to be Carroll getting equal shares and stuff? I don't know. I'm a little cautious, but his price tag is nice. I mean, 5,600 against BC. It is a good tag, so I get it. But I think I'm lower than the field will be on him as well. So let's move on to the afternoon. Oh man, Oklahoma's looked like shit so far. Minus 13.5, 45.5 versus Tulane. Tulane plays so slow total. Oklahoma's looked like shit. They got line problems. Bruce, sell me on something in this game.
Man, I was on Tulane plus the points early in the week, and Oklahoma just has tons of issues on offense. You said the line issues. That's mainly what it is. It looks terrible. They can't run the football. Jackson Arnold looks bad. It's a new offense this year, so maybe he's just getting used to it. But the receivers are terrible. They haven't had Nick Anderson, who has been practicing a little bit. So interested to see if he plays. That could add some explosiveness. I know their tight end Bauer Sharp got hurt late in the game too against Houston. They barely won 16-12 against Houston that lost to UNLV. So man, I just think Tulane is too good here. And Oklahoma has a big game next week too. So, classic look ahead spot. It's it's at home, but I really like Tulane. I think Mekhi Hughes is a solid play at 6K. Nobody's going to play him. He's going to be low owned, and he just gets all the snaps, 80% of the snaps last week. And against Kansas State, Tulane's defensive line is really good too. So just a really bad matchup for Oklahoma up front. And Jackson Arnold already hasn't had enough time to throw the football. So going to be a lot of quick passes out to the sides, like to Burks and Brennan Thompson, who's going to be owned. He played 90% of the snaps last week, had a touchdown. So he's definitely in play. I don't love that, even though he is 4K. He played at Texas, and I don't know, maybe I have scars there from watching him play. But yeah, I think it's a really good game. I think Tulane's going to run the football. I don't really have any other plays other than that. I think Tulane plus the number is a great play this week.
Like that. What do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd want to like Oklahoma guys in this spot in theory, but split backfield. I never play Oklahoma running backs. You get Arnold, who's not running as much as you'd want from him at this price. I mean, I think that's a pretty easy fade. Burks is like the one guy I really want, but he's 8K, and that's a pretty hard click to make. So simply for that, like, he kind of falls into like the Lacey basket for me of like guys that no one's going to play just because they're like too expensive. But I mean, you could see him put up a huge game in this spot. If they're throwing quick passes and whatnot, like, I mean, he can house them. You should rack up some receptions here. Don't mind that play for 8K. Thompson probably be in my pool. Not going to sniff a cash game for me. I just think there's some really good like mid-tier receiver options as to where you don't have to go down that low. Tulane. I always get these abbreviations messed up. I like playing Hughes in general. He's an absolute workhorse running back, and he always makes my player pool. In a better matchup, he'd be a cash play. It's just not as good of a spot for him as you'd want. Even if we like the points here, it still makes him a tournament play, in my opinion, in a pretty good one at that. Don't think a lot of people make that click this week, but he would be the guy to run it back with for me.
And again, just looking through this game, man, I hate making fun of Saber because I actually really do like Saber and what they've been doing. Another Millie Maker last night. If you guys didn't see that, Millie Maker win with the Saber sim. But man, they got Oklahoma at 37 points on here. The total's only 45. I mean, it is a tough scene for these team totals on here. Jackson Arnold 9,700. How in the world? One thing I will never do is play a quarterback in a 45 total with 9,700. I mean, that is a tough click. I'm firmly with Bryce on this. Burks is in play just the same as these other spend up receivers. If you can find a build with like really cheap running backs, this is like my old school build a few years ago. I would always do with Fallick, where play two really cheap running backs and then jam these stud receivers. Burks is getting just peppered with targets. Slow game though, so he's just not going to get any ownership and stuff. And I think he's got like a lot of upside. I played Sawchuck the same week everyone did, 2 weeks ago now. Yeah, this Barnes looks better to me, and he's way cheaper. But it still is a terrible spot with line problems. But he's 5,100, so I'm going to leave Barnes in my pool. Thompson's going to be in the pool too just because he's 4K. Like Bruce said, though, Thompson might end up like really popular just because he's 4K. You need some value somewhere, and he played, what'd you say, Bruce, 90% or something last week of the snaps?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, people are going to like that because people are in on the stats these days. They're going to see that 90% 4K tag. I think he's a decent play. And, I mean, Tulane, I can't play Hughes. I get it. I can't do it, though. In a low total, dog spot, 6K, I just can't do it. Let's move on to the next one. Another low total. Minnesota minus 17.5, 44.5 versus Nevada. What do we got? Another ugly game, Bruce.
Yeah, this one is really really tough. Two slow teams, two teams that want to run the football, both over 50%. And Nevada going on the road against Minnesota. Minnesota's just going to pound it all all game long. Darius Taylor, he's not looked 100% to me yet, but he's 6,200, and I like him to score at least one touchdown here. You'll probably see some Marcus Major as well. He's 4,900, so don't hate him in tournaments because a lot of people are gonna play Taylor at this price and starting. But Major got 27% of the snaps last week. I think they blew out whoever they played.
Rhode Island, I think.
Rhode Island, yeah. I think it was close, maybe the first half or something. But
48-0 final.
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah. I don't know when they scored them, but it says 48-0.
Yep. And I think I think Taylor's a great play at that price, 6,200 against a bad Nevada defense, going on the road. So definitely in play. Really don't want to play any of these Nevada running backs. Garwo's not bad, but he's not really a receiver, so not much interest there. The Nevada receivers are interesting at their price. You got Braham for 4,400 and Jaden Smith for 4,200. Both of those guys nearly 30% target share. 10 targets for Braham last week and 9 for Smith. So definitely some interest there. Daniel Jackson's like the only receiver I ever play for Minnesota, just because he's explosive and can make big plays. 20% target share. Just needs one really to get there at that price. So I have some interest in him in tournaments, but yeah, this is just going to be a running game, really slow. Taylor in play, and then the two Nevada receivers.
What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, Taylor's one of the best plays on the slate, in my opinion. I would definitely play some Major in tournaments that lineups that you don't have Taylor in, because he's going to be super popular. Like, if he doesn't have a good game, I bet Major has a good game. Like, I think it's pretty hard for one of these guys not to on the ground with, Minnesota's expected run rate here. No interest outside of Djax in the Minnesota passing game. Like, he'd be a tournament sprinkle for me, but just not consistent enough of a passing attack volume for me to really target heavily. Nevada, on the other hand, I mean, playing from behind, one of these cheap receivers could get there just based on volume. I prefer Bram, but I think there are better spots here. It's just a really tough matchup against a slow-paced Minnesota football team. So, I'll have him in some tournaments. He definitely doesn't crack the cash conversation for me, but they do get a lot of volume, so that makes them plays in my mind.
Yep. No crazy takes for me here. I agree totally with you guys. Taylor was injured the first week when Major had the good game or whatever he did the first game, but Taylor was out. Last game was a blowout, so they were easing Taylor back in, but he still got a majority of the work. This week's the Taylor hammer. I mean, you can see it coming. I mean, Minnesota loves – if there's one thing I know in college football, Minnesota, this dude jerks off to running the football. So Darius Taylor is in really good shape, but he's going to be owned. I mean, again, you guys both said it. Don't worry about it. I don't like some of the other chalk running backs. I'm definitely going to like Taylor. I mean, he just looks like a smash to me. So I'm in on that. I actually didn't have either Nevada receiver bookmark because I just assumed I wasn't going to play anyone. But like usual, when Bruce brings it up, I pull him up, especially this Braham. I mean, 4,400 seems like a great pivot, even off that Oklahoma guy. It's 400 more, but it feels like a pretty good spot, even though he's cheap. A lot of targets, which is what I want. When I play a cheap guy, I don't necessarily want the same upside I do from the upper guys. I want like 15 to 20 points from this guy, and I think he can get that for us. So totally with you guys on this game. Let's move it on to Oregon State. I thought these guys always played around Thanksgiving, maybe with the pack going away. 16.5, Oregon, 50 is the total. First of all, didn't they always play this game later in the year, Bruce? What's going on with that?
Yeah, this one and the Washington State game that's also on the slate,
It was
confused me.
Thanksgiving weekend, right?
Yeah, it's always later in the year. Yeah, so it's kind of strange to see it early on. But yeah, this game is interesting for sure. It is at Oregon State, and Oregon State's going to try to slow it down. They've ran the ball 70% of the time first two games, and one of the slowest paces on the slate. Oregon's also been pretty slow. I think this game could be one of those ones that's 17-14 kind of rivalry game feel to it for sure. Dylan Gabriel at 9,900 is crazy, but he has upside as a passer and a rusher, so he just hasn't thrown the ball down the field. His ADOT is under 6 yards so far, which is tough to play at that price unless he's going to run the football, and he hasn't done much of that early on. So not a ton of interest. Jordan James is the one that interests me a little bit in tournaments. So expensive, 8,200, and getting 71% of the snaps last week, 16 carries per game. He's definitely the workhorse guy on this team. So I think the way to attack Oregon State is on the ground, and I think he's one of those guys that can do that. Oregon State has too many running backs to play. You got Jam Griffin and Hankerson. Both of those guys are getting snaps. They started Jam Griffin last week, and he scored a touchdown when I had Hankerson. So I was kind of pissed off about that. But Oregon receivers are always in play. Johnson and Stewart. Stewart, you get a discount there. He had a big game last week while Johnson did nothing. I think the big plays here are Trent Walker, 4,400 receiver from Oregon State, 50% target share first 2 weeks, 13 targets last week. He's going to be owned for sure at that price. I think he's better than I think he's a better play than Brennan Thompson. I've watched him. He's a little whitey slot guy. Actually, he's been playing outside. He's not a slot guy. But Terrence Ferguson also in play, the Oregon tight end, nice target share for cheap there. I think those two guys, and then Jordan James in tournaments are my main interest here. This game's mostly going to be slow though.
Another guy I think just sucks is Dylan Gabriel. I know he's been like around the block, but I watch him and I just think he literally sucks. And he's 99. That's another reason I think that they've looked a little weak the first couple of weeks to me. Bryce, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel's not really in play here for me at 9,900. I'm just playing Milroe over him in this spot every time. If the way Milroe runs, I don't really think there's a comparison here. I would just rather take even in tournaments Milroe shares personally, and you get his weapons for like cheaper too. Like if you're playing Gabriel, like he's gonna need to get it done on the ground. B, he's gonna need to throw well too. I mean, Tez Johnson 8,500. I mean,
how the hell can you play those guys? Seriously, how can you play Gabriel with Tez? Like that is so expensive.
No, I mean, no, like that's what I'm saying. Just go play Milroe and his guy for 5,600. Like,
and they're both better. Is the crazy part? Yeah, they're both better than these two guys.
Yeah, I just think you're kind of priced out of this Oregon offense. Like, I mean, they're good, but there's not a single cheap guy to play here. All four guys you'd want to play 8,500, 6,800, 8,200, 9,900. I mean, it's just a way. DraftKings did a way better job with pricing this week. They overpriced Oregon in the spot. I'm not really going to have any of them.
It's 4,800.
Yeah, I mean,
what is happening?
They priced them like it would take like what, a 75 total with like a close game for me to play them at this price would be like the spot. Instead, you get like a big favorite at a 50 total. A hard pass for me here on Oregon. Oregon State, on the other hand, I really do like Walker receiver. His volume, they're going to be playing from behind. He's my favorite, like, sub 5K guy if you're going cheap at receiver here, simply based on volume alone. Yeah, I don't really like anything else from Oregon State here. Other than him, this game's pretty much a fade for me.
It's just you said it perfectly because I don't know how they price these guys like this. And believe me, I wish I could like talk myself into it as a tournament player and stuff. They're literally unplayable. You cannot pay these price tags for these guys. It's just insane. And you bring up a good point though, because the Bama game, the spread's 15.5, 49.5 total. This game's basically the same thing, 16.5, 50. So why in the world would you play Gabriel and a receiver over Milrow and a receiver? It's just so much better of pricing and talent level in the same spread in total, exact same spot. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's a good comparison. You save salary and they're better plays. So let's move on to the other previous matchup, Washington State. Washington is 5.5, 55.5 is the total. This game's a lot better in my mind. But Bruce, what do you got in this one?
Yeah, I agree. You have John Mateer. I think he ran for nearly 200 yards or maybe 200 yards last week. And now gets a soft matchup here against Washington's defense. Lost a ton after their coach left. And they haven't particularly looked good the first couple weeks. So I have some interest in both sides here. I don't think Washington State's good on defense either. And the total looks nice, 54.5. And Washington State's been actually running the football a lot this season, which they're kind of a spread air raid type offense in the past, but the run's been really effective. I know last week against Texas Tech, I watched this young running back, Wayshawn Parker. He's 4,100, and he looked great. I don't know why the projections are so low around the industry on him, but he got 40% of the snaps. He's 4,100. Kind of a rotation, I guess, but 5.42 yards after contact. He's a bigger back. It kind of looks the part. So I'm gonna have some interest in him in tournaments. But Jonah Coleman, 6,800, was a stud at Arizona. Followed his coach to Washington, and I think he's gonna put up some big yardage this weekend. Got 65% of the snaps last week. Is almost averaging 5 yards after contact per attempt. It's against weaker competition, but we saw it in the past. Arizona, dude is a stud for sure. So definitely have interest in those two guys on the ground. And then you have the passing game. It's all priced up again. Kind of like last game. If Kyle Williams at 7K, he hasn't done too much, but that ADOT's nice at 20 yards. And in the past he's been solid. Easy to pair him up with Mateer in tournaments for sure. Denzel Boston's also good, good receiver. He's younger, but he looks the part. Giles Jackson, also a really good receiver. I think he transferred in from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. Played a little bit last year. And then Chris Hudson at 4,900, kind of been wide receiver one for Washington State. 29% target share and 88% of snaps last week. So I like him a lot. And then Jeremiah Hunter for Washington, 5,900, the Cal transfer. He's been good in the past as well. Has a touchdown this year, and probably won't be owned. So have some interest in those guys.
Strong, what do you think?
Yeah, my favorite plays here, Bruce just brought him up, are Mater and Hudson here. Get a running quarterback and cheap receiver. Sign me up. I think Hudson's pretty talented. As Bruce said, transferred in, and friendly price to go along with it too. Doesn't break the bank. Kyle Williams is good as well, but you get that 2.1K savings. It's real nice. You can get. It's the difference between like James and Ollie Gordon. It really does matter. So like him at mid-tier receiver, which is a pretty loaded position this week, in my opinion. I hadn't looked tons at Parker, to be honest, but I think this is a pretty solid play. I agree completely with Bruce, and I think he's kind of off everyone's radar. So I'm not sure if he'd make my cash team. I don't think he will, but I think he's a great tournament play here at 4.1K. I know Tony's always talking about trying to find the spend down running back to like fit other guys in. He seems like one of the ones that can do it on this slate. And those are pretty much 3 plays for me from Washington State. Washington, it's kind of hard for me. It's harder to play receiver roulette like in the high 6Ks. But any of these guys are playable. Jackson, Boston, Hunter. I would prefer Jackson personally, but not a huge lean from you there. Washington guy I'd really like here is Coleman. Seems like he could definitely get it done on the ground here at 6.8K. Have no interest in Rodgers at 9.2K. Way too expensive for someone who doesn't run.
Yep. Love that Bruce brought up this 4,100 guy. It looks like that's exactly what I wanted on this slate too, is a guy like that. So makes a lot of sense to go there. But I think this game is like pretty easy too. Like Coleman at 6,800. I think I got him as my number 1 running back right there, based on price, obviously, not factoring Ollie, who's more expensive. But he just looks like a smash in this spot, especially against this defense. It makes it easy because, like Schlong said, it's tough to gamble on the receivers, and I hate Will Rogers. He's another guy that I just think sucks. I know I keep saying this about all these quarterbacks, but it's how I feel, and we'll get to a couple guys that I like at quarterback as we get to the later games. I mean, Will Rogers at 9,200 is just insane to me. I don't see how you could click that button, especially when the other quarterback in the same freaking game is one of the best guys on the slate. 8,900, barely cheaper. So I don't see how, honestly, how you could play anyone on Washington except Jonah Coleman, which seems a little weird because they do have talent, but it's almost like Oregon where their guys are just too expensive. So give me Coleman at 6,800. Washington State, they might be one of my favorite teams on the slate though, because I love the quarterback. I love the Parker play now at 40. It reminds me a little bit of Pitt in the last few weeks, where I think you could play quarterback, running back, receiver on the same team and then run it back with a running back the other way. And I was actually going to talk up Kyle Williams because Chris Hudson is projected similarly to him. And I don't think people are going to click Kyle Williams, which he went for 33 or something the opening game. I just think he's got a lot of upside. And I think everyone's just going to click Hudson over him, which opens it up a little bit. But I love Washington State. You got a running quarterback that has guys he can throw to. You have cheap running backs you can play to. Even the other guy, the Baker, the second running back, 3,500 looks decent to me. I mean, decent enough. It kind of goes to one of those builds I was talking about where you stack up one of those weird games and then you play like these 2 running backs together with Coleman, like the 3 running backs in this game. It's just a totally weird like tournament build that you could just stack up some explosive offenses the other way with some spend up quarterbacks type thing. But I like this game a lot. I love that Bruce brought up the Wayshawn Parker play. Great play. I think we all love. Material has to be, if not your number 1 quarterback, right there, 2, 3 when we get to our rankings on the site. But let's move on to the next game. We got Texas. Ooh, bad game here. Texas A&M -4, 46 total. Florida absolutely blows. Bruce, what do you got here?
Yeah, not much interest. I know that Eugene Wilson could be out for Florida. And if that's the case, we could get a cheap receiver from Florida. I think he's 3,200. If he's starting, I have some interest. I think he ran like a 4.2 40 or something. Someone was telling me. I have him on the playbook. Let me see if I can find him. I think it's Hawkins.
In the 3K shitter column.
He's 3,200, so he's pretty damn close.
His name's Tank.
It is.
Oh, baby! Don't get me excited. 3,200 and his name's Tank.
Yep. So Got to have some interest there. I think he caught a touchdown last week too. So
does he still have to have Graham Mertz throwing, or did they change it yet?
They're going to rotate, from what I've heard. If Lagway starts, he's the running quarterback. he's from Texas.
I can only imagine how someone is worse than Mertz if Mertz was starting. I can only imagine how bad this guy is.
You have to run him out there. I mean,
put anyone out there over Mertz. I
mean, it might buy you a couple more games at least as the coach. So, I have some interest in this 3,200 receiver, Tank Hawkins. But I think the guy that gets the biggest bump is Elijah Badger, 4,600. Especially if Wilson's out, he's going to be the number one guy. And he's good to us at Arizona State. Looked better last week. I don't think he looked good week one. He scored. I think he had a long catch last week. Maybe it was a touchdown. I'm not sure. But he looked good. I have some interest there, and Connor Wegman is questionable, so he's questionable as a quarterback to me to begin with. But if he's out, or maybe we get reports that he's not playing because that's a late game. Could get Marcel Reed at 4,500 running quarterback for A&M, but just something to look at there. Montrell Johnson is a good play here at running back. You're going to get most of the carries, and Texas A&M's defense hasn't looked great either. So I have some interest there. I think Notre Dame ran the football on them pretty effectively, so especially in the second half of that game. So I think Johnson is a solid play at that price at 6,100.
What do you think, Bryce?
Not really a game I'm looking to actively target. If Wegman and Wilson are in, it just kind of kills the cheap plays here. So definitely a new spot to watch. If we get Wegman out, I think Reed is definitely in play at 4,500. You get a Stoneman quarterback who runs on a decent team, even in a bad total, sign me up for that. And then, I've always liked Elijah Badger. Definitely not clicking him if Wilson's in, but if Wilson's out, he becomes de facto one. I think he'd be worth a shot here. It's just kind of wait and see for me on this game with news. Thankfully, I think most of my exposure is going to be in the afternoon, so I will have some flexibility here. It seems like most of the guys that we really want to play are in this 2:30 window for the most part. Outside of Bama, I think we liked, and Oak State and the Oak State game were kind of like the early ones. So should have a decent amount of flexibility to get some of these guys in. I personally would not plan for Reed to be in as the starter or Wilson to be out, unless we get reports in the morning, just because you're kind of screwed. It's really hard. It's easier to swap onto a $4,500 quarterback than swap off. It's easier to swap off of Wilson than it is to swap onto him. So don't love this game outside of injury potential.
Yeah, totally agree with you guys. I don't like this game. The Florida games always suck. But if we get injuries, like Schlong said, you can definitely pivot onto some plays. But I think he broke it down perfect where you just don't plan ahead, because you're screwed if it doesn't happen. And you would have to pivot onto a different position. And you have to play two quarterbacks on a slate like this. So I wouldn't do it unless you have a plan. But one guy that I don't know why he pops out to me, and I was trying to see if I was just missing something, but Le'Veon Moss looks pretty good in this spot. They're favored by 4. I just feel like Florida is waiting to quit a little bit, like Florida State too, where they just look like a defeated team to me. I think Moss has a little bit of upside. I just feel like he could be a low-owned 30 piece in this game. Unless I'm missing something. He looks good, right, Bruce? Or what am I missing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's looked really good as well. He's a solid play. Should get most of the carries.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Last two games, and we're back to the best team the last couple of weeks. Pitt, they sucked last week, but they're back again this week in another really good spot against West Virginia. And you finally get a couple good quarterback plays in this game. I don't know why Garrett Green's only 7,800. And these Pitt guys, again, I know we got screwed. And some of the people that got the props last week we were talking about, I mean, the props on this Pitt team was insane. And I know we didn't hit them all. And different things happen along the way. But man, these prices are absurd again. I mean, Reed 6,400. Holstein looked like the worst quarterback I've ever seen in my life, and still got 30 points. And they're back home though. Dunkel always used to talk about that on these shows, but college kids, it does matter a decent amount. Like if this game was in West Virginia, I would look at it totally different for Pitt. They were in Cincy last week. It was super windy. So I'm not making excuses. He was shitty. He was terrible. But they're back home now, and the spot's good, and these prices are incredible. So, Bruce, what do you think? Can they bounce back, or are they actually that shitty?
Yeah, I think this is a much tougher matchup than the first 2 weeks for sure. Like Kent State, I talked about it in the chat.
The total's higher though than last week.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And this is a rivalry game as well. So I think West Virginia is definitely going to have their way with Pitt. I don't like their defense at all. But yeah, if they get down a couple touchdowns, I mean, Pitt's going to throw either way. But if they get down a couple touchdowns, it's just going to be it's going to be a lot of plays made out on the field. If you watched West Virginia's first game against Penn State, their slot defense was terrible. They gave up like almost 200 yards receiving to Harrison Wallace. And this week we get our boy Poppy in the slot against this West Virginia defense that's giving up tons of explosive plays through the air. So I have some interest in Poppy again this week, even though he wasn't great last week. But him and Mumpfield are both solid plays in my eyes. I think they're going to be trailing, so I think they're going to have huge games. But Garrett Green definitely the best player.
What makes you think they're going to be trailing?
I think West Virginia is a much better team here.
I hate disagreeing with Bruce.
Yeah, I just think they're going to be able to control the game on the ground for sure. But
you just said how they're not going to be able to stop them though. That's the problem.
Well, I think West Virginia's defense is the best defense.
You can't sell me on freaking Poppy crushing them in the slot and then say they're going to shut them down. You can't. That's going to be blue balls.
I mean, it's going to be there, but I don't like Holstein as much as most people do, I guess.
I don't know if anyone actually likes him as far as the quarter. They just like the system. He's so bad.
Yeah. I mean, he looked good against Kent State, but Kent State lost against some like random Pennsylvania school last week that
I honestly didn't think he looked that because Mangone was here too, and we talked about it. I honestly think he didn't look good that week. I know his stats did, but he was holding the ball way too long. They weren't getting pressure, and he was still taking sacks and stuff. Like, I thought he looked pretty bad both weeks.
Yeah.
We thought he was going to get benched last week.
He was close to getting benched.
He was close to getting benched.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And they won the game.
And he scored 30-plus fantasy points after it was all said.
I was scrolling the scoreboard last week, and I was like, man, I still can't believe they won that game. That's nuts. Yeah, like since he just threw the whole game somehow.
But I had so much money on Pitt, and I felt like I got so freaking lucky. I got so lucky to win those games.
Yeah, it's like the Utah or the Baylor bettors last week. The Baylor backers that got lucky when Rising got
that one. I was on the right side of one and the wrong side of the other one.
Yeah, Baylor looked horrible and somehow covered. So
covered kind of easy too when it was all said and done.
Yeah. Yeah, and this game, Reed's going to be popular. Probably, think he might be the most owned running back. He's just looked good, and he's underpriced here again, 6,400 for everything that he does. 6 targets per game, 17 carries, returns punts. Eventually, he's gonna wear down, but until then, I think you just ride him.
He's cramped every week. Every week, I've watched him leave with cramps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably going to be hot again. This is definitely the toughest matchup he's going to have, but I just think he's too cheap here. I think he should be 7,400. So I like him. I think Jaheim White is a great play at 6K. But this Pitt defense hasn't faced an O-line like West Virginia's, and he's going to be low owned just because everybody's playing Garrett Green, but White is, he's a good receiver as well. I just think he's a great play. 5.1 yards after contact per attempt for White as well. I love that. And then all the Pitt receivers are in play here. My favorite's Poppy, but Mumpfield and Johnson are also good receivers. It's so hard to play West Virginia receivers, but I think Cole Taylor probably the best one, the tight end, 4,100. If you're going to play anybody there, it's just, so much rotation. West Virginia's receiving core, and it's they just don't get enough volume.
Schlong, what do you think?
Garrett Green's going to be the chalk QB on the slate. I don't see how he isn't. And I'm probably going to be eating that chalk. For those of you who haven't been here the first couple of weeks, Pitt plays like the new air raid offense. They're running a play every 5-10 seconds. So it just based on volume. Even if they're scoring, their offense isn't going to be on the field much. So you get a lot of Garrett Green. He runs the ball. Their running backs split. They're a much tougher click than Green. I think they're good tournament plays for that reason. Just because I think Green's going to be the chalk here. You can 100% play him unpaired, and I'm playing him unpaired when I do play him. I just can't figure out this West Virginia receiver rotation. Probably take a shot on some of them in tournaments, but not. I just think there are much better receiver plays here. Pitt side of the ball, I don't really want to play Holstein, but I might end up on him. I think there's 4 quarterbacks that really kind of stand out to me, and I hate to say it, but he's one of them. If he doesn't get benched, it's a system play, but he was absolute ass last week and put up 30 points. And, it's kind of hard for him not to in this offense. The same can be said for Reed, just based on his role. He's like a little H-hand type of dude, that'll, get you 15 carries and 5 to 10 targets. He can contribute in any facet of the game. I think him and Taylor are going to be the highest owned running backs this week. So you're definitely eating a bit of chalk there. Pitt receivers, I was hoping it'd be Johnson last week, but I really do think now that Mumpfield is the alpha of this group. I would go back to Kenny in tournaments, Williams tournaments for me. But Mumpfield would kind of be the cash play here at 6K. I think all three are good plays. I'm more than willing to go back to the well. Until Pitt doesn't play a shootout game, I'm going to continue being over on their games. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I don't disagree with Bruce much, but I think Pitt goes up and down the field on this team. I was just as critical last week of Pitt as anyone. I watched that game so close just because I had so much action tied to it. And the one guy I can't go back to is Kenny Johnson. We had him last week. I just felt like they never looked his way. And I like Poppy and Mumpfield so much. And even Bartholomew, the tight end, I think somewhat in play at 3,800. But, man, Reed looks like I don't know how you don't play Reed. Outside of him getting injured or whatever, he's going to get there. He's just electric. He's 6,400. And, Holstein, I don't have to play, though, just because Garrett Green, I'll even say it, Garrett Green looks like a lock to me on all teams. Pitt's not slowing anyone up. He's going to run, and he's cheap. He's way cheaper he's only 500 more than Holstein, too. He's just he should be in that 9K range with everybody else. And he's 7,800 against, like these guys said, the best paced team in the country, basically, Pittsburgh, the way they play now. You're just going to have to play Garrett Green. And I honestly think you could build a weird stack in this game where you play both running backs and both quarterbacks and kind of maybe one Pitt receiver, and you got a little 5-man weird stack where, because they're all going to run and get the ball, they could all get there easily. So I'm definitely high on Pitt again. I know that's shocking, but man, these price tags, Poppy at 4,600 looks very, very good in tournament. No one's going to play Poppy, and no one at 4,600, and that's just a really good spot. So hopefully we get some points. Let's move to the last game. Another ugly one, though. Notre Dame, Purdue, 47.5 total. Notre Dame, I don't know what happened last week, but they look terrible. Bruce, what do you got?
Yeah, they did. They did look terrible, losing to Northern Illinois, and yeah, at home too. That makes it 1,000 times worse, man. They get Purdue, which Purdue, I don't know if I love their defense. So I think they should be able to move the football rather easily on the ground. The problem is that Riley Leonard is banged up as well. I think he hurt something in his off shoulder and is wearing like a big brace. We've always attacked Purdue's defense in the past with teams, but man, this Notre Dame offense is just so so hard to watch, and it doesn't make any sense because they have so much talent, and it's been just terrible the last couple of years. So I think Jeremiah Love is probably my favorite. If I'm going to play somebody, he's 5,700. Got 50% of the snaps last week at running back. If you're going to play someone in tournaments, Maccabee's always in play. That's my guy. He's only 4,400, and the defensive line for Notre Dame has been pretty bad. Looking at the numbers, 3.24 line yards for their defensive line given up, and they haven't really. I mean, they played Northern Illinois and they played A&M, so that's kind of concerning. And Maccabee is solid through the air and on the ground, so I have a little bit of interest there, and it's at home, so yeah, 4,400 is a good price for him. Receivers, man, there's some 3K shitters on this one for Purdue. I made up the playbook yesterday, and I put this Rigby guy who starts. He's 3K for Purdue, and Jaden Dixon-Veal is also 3K. He hasn't been starting, but he started last year and was a big part of their offense. But other than that, man, I can't play any of these Notre Dame receivers. I just I hate their offense.
3K shitters though, baby. That's what gets you to the winner's circle with some of these high price tags. Get that column filled up for us. Bryce, what do you got in this ugly one?
As much as I like the other game, I hate this game. Full fade for me. Make it easy.
Yeah, I'm the same way. The only way I would click something in this game is if Bruce said, like, play one. I can always play a 3K guy.
If a 3K shows up on the playbook, he's in the pool.
He's in the pool for sure when it's a 3K, dude. I want just a little sprinkle always. And so Maccabee was pretty good, like, even years ago. But, I mean, I just don't want to play guys in this game. In college, you don't need to force stuff. Just play the good plays, filter in a few low-owned guys, and you're good. So I think that covers it, but let's get to what everyone wants anyways, our plays of the day. Bruce, you want to start us out?
Yeah, I'll go with man, he's gonna be higher owned than I want, but I'm gonna go with Jonah Coleman, the Washington running back.
Love that. Schlong, what do we got?
I'm gonna go Desmond Reed. Really tough for me to get away from him this week.
Yeah, I mean, you guys start out with the two best running backs. This is my point, though, of college, and I want people to, like, understand it. There's nothing wrong with just playing. Don't worry about ownership with your whole team. Like, those two plays that they just gave are, like, the two best plays of the slate, even if they're high-owned. I don't even care if they're high-owned. They're going to be the two best plays. Man, I was going to give a running back, too. I was going to give my boy I don't want to give three running backs, though. I'm going to go with – I've had the trend all year of the receivers, so I'm going to go with our boy from Bama, Ryan Williams. What was he, 5,600? I talked him up hard, and then I found a bunch of guys I liked after that. I thought he was going to be my play of the day to start, though. So I'll go back to him, even though we found some other guys I like. But 5,600, mispriced. You can play him with Milrow. Love everything about it, and I love their two plays of the day. So we're kind of – even if you threw Milrow in that, you'd have a nice little start to your team. But anything else, guys? We'll get Slong to the wedding.
Nothing here. Football tonight. 2-gamer. So.
Yeah. Well, who is it tonight? Is it anything decent, Bruce?
Yeah, Arizona and Kansas State and Kansas and UNLV. So 2 pretty good games, competitive games for sure.
And Bruce will have content up like always. I'll put a core up. I put some tags too last night for the members. Check it out. We're about to hop on with ODB and JSU for the Print Factory of the week. So if you want to keep watching, flip over to that one. I'm going to hop over there. But we will see you guys next week. Let's get it done this week. Another big week. See you, everybody.